What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Psychedelic State Podcast. My name is Brett. I'm here with my homies Carson and Ashley, and today we are going to talk about the future of psychedelics, where things are headed with all this craziness going on, where, what the possibilities are on the good side, what people are talking already about as some negative things that can come out of it. But I think we should start with our recent, me and Ashley were able to sneak into the recent psychedelic conference
Infiltration.
called Wonderland, which we will have a separate video on the YouTube channel if you want to check that out, where we went around and interviewed people after sneaking in, and that was pretty fun. But overall, like, my takeaway from that whole experience was it was mind-blowing to see this, mega conference, like a huge thing with multiple rooms and multiple stages and multiple things going on and tons of businesses that are now in this space, and to meet some of the people that are involved in that. And my biggest takeaway from that was like, all right, it's here, it's happening. Now it's just about the rollout and where things go. So I guess let's look at like, where do we see things in like 5 years? Like, what are the ups? What are the downs? Carson, what do you think about this?
Well, I think like there's lots of pros, and they're fairly obvious. You're not gonna have people going to fucking jail for LSD possession or whatever. At least not like up here in Canada, where most stuff is going to be decriminalized, if not legalized. I think
it'll be the same in the US with that.
It's an easy pro. I think the destigmatization of psychedelics is a major positive. I think,
which seems to already be happening. Like, one of the things that I did yesterday and today was, if you just go on Google and type in psychedelics and then go to the news tab, everything's positive.
Yeah.
Every article is fucking positive. There's not one negative article on psychedelics.
Well, even the fact
the current trending news.
The fact that there's like Netflix documentaries by dudes like Michael Pollan that are, fucking popping off. Grandmas, moms and dads, young kids, everybody, getting a decent taste of the possibility of what psychedelics can do for us as a society, as individuals, like the healing that can come from that, the collective unification of us. Like, we're so fragmented and so we're so divided politically, like socially, class-wise. There's such a division, and there's division in so many different ways. I think psychedelics really have a possible, way of unifying us as humans again, because that's one of the major parts of, or major pros, I guess, of psychedelic journeying, is seeing the oneness and in everyone and in everything. So I think those are definitely pros that are going to come from this in time.
And I think that's definitely something that's also peaked in, that we can look at the previous incarnations of kind of widespread psychedelic use in the underground via the 60s, the 90s rave culture, where these scenes that came out of this psychedelic use, it was all the summer of love in fucking the 60s. In the 90s, it was plur, peace, love, unity, respect. Like, this seems to be the trend that comes out of a psychedelic movement, even though, they're music-based and psychedelic-based, but, just the use of psychedelics seems to lend itself to openness, love, and unity.
Well, I feel like that's one of the things, too, probably the reason why the government was such a big to crack down on those things. There's a Terrence McKenna quote where he talks about, the kind, loving government. They're not banning, psychedelics because they are trying to keep you safe. They're banning it because people take power in division, especially in the political realm. So, oneness and people looking out for each other isn't really high up on the list of people that are trying to profiteer off of people that are fighting each other, and not seeing that the real enemy is people that are actually fucking you over, you know?
Yeah.
You look at things like alcohol and stuff like that. Alcohol and the stuff that is made available readily to the population are things that keep you in loops, and they help build negative, unhealthy patterns that people stay in for sometimes their entire life. And you have things like psychedelics in all different forms that can help break these cycles and help make people healthier, not just mentally, but, you know, physically. You know, people begin to kind of take more of a priority in their health.
Yeah.
Overall, you feel like I know that when I took ayahuasca last time, I felt extremely healthy, and I felt conscious of like how my body was on even like an atomic level, and it made me think about what I was putting in myself and think about, you know, being as healthy and being and basically living as full and as long as possible.
I think that there's
Yeah. And I think like if
I think there's like the community aspect too that really comes with psychedelic use too, which is another part of that unification that comes with psychedelic use, especially like when it's widespread across like society. Like people like ayahuasca, for example, doing it in groups, that when you do psychedelics with a group of people, there's like that's like a bonding experience to the next level, you know, where you really like develop deep connections with other people through the collective journey that you all sort of go through in that setting and with those substances. So I think
I feel like it's funny too, because, you know, ayahuasca is obviously a pretty great go-to for like the ceremony, but you even look at stuff like, you know, when you're a fucking kid and you take mushrooms with your friends, or do like MDMA or something like that. Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, I think back to the stories that I talk about with some of my older friends, and we still talk about like the first time we took acid at a friend's house and got naked and jumped off the fucking roof into a pool, like weird random shit like that. That's not at all like, oh, some big spiritual shit, but it was definitely a community building thing, and it's something that has lasted, you know, in our minds for over 20 years.
Yeah. And I think like so looking at the previous incarnations of the psychedelic movements, they were obviously underground. And if we go back to the 60s and look at what happened, it really caught the government off guard. Like they had no idea what the fuck to do with this movement that was going on there. It was unprecedented. They had never seen anything like it. And obviously it terrified the shit out of them. And they wanted to clamp down on it quick because it was literally going to change the landscape of America very quickly.
It's unraveling everything that they built.
So let's look at it.
The Vietnam, like the anti-war movement and stuff too, which, you know, the governments are heavily invested in war. You know, there's so much money to be made there.
That shit.
And when the collective mass is like, fuck war, you know, like we don't want this, and it's being driven by, you know, psychedelics that are opening people's minds in ways that make it easy to see how we're being, you know, steered in specific directions for nefarious purposes. You know, yeah, they're going to fucking clamp down on that shit hard. It's affecting their bottom line.
Well, what happens, like, so that being said, this is a completely different landscape that we're looking at. We're looking at this being an above ground movement this time.
Yeah.
This being a government approved movement this time. And, you know, so if we can look at these past times when this happened, and draw from that what kind of went wrong in the eyes of either the government or the people involved with. Hold on, my cat is. Go ahead, buddy. There you go.
Paul, what's up, baby?
So, I mean, if we look at like, and that really gets into this idea of the rollout, right? Because if it happens too fast, it's going to scare people. And because it seems to be what has happened in the past, like it kind of snuck up on people, and then holy fuck, like all these people are taking drugs. This is crazy, blah, blah, blah. Whereas this time we actually have that data to work with and say, all right, how do we roll this out in a way where it rolls out smooth, where it rolls out where it's not a just on and off switch kind of thing, and it's more of a gradual change in society where people don't get caught off guard. But I mean, obviously there's going to be pushback. There's no doubt about it that there's going to be certain like communities of people that push back on anything considered a drug, and that's fine. But the main thing is going to be like the laws and the accessibility of this shit. And that's where like the rollout comes. So like from what we saw at Wonderland, like there's a lot of money involved in this shit, but there's also a lot of people who are holding down the fort for the idea that this is for everybody. This isn't something that should be commodified. This isn't, and there's pros and cons, all that shit too.
Well, I think that sadly, like in the States at least, obviously people with more affluence are going to have access to better versions of everything, whether it be healthcare, whether it be the food that you eat. If you have money, if you're of a certain class, and sadly, like race and a lot of things that really shouldn't come into this conversation, because we're talking about healing people and helping people. It does, because money is the king in our country. So money being a part of it, it seems like a lot of things that money touch, it makes it kind of evil in a way. That's just one perspective. And I know that there's other reasons why having a bunch of money behind it, obviously, like money helps more research being done on it and stuff like that. There's a lot of good things about money, but it has that absolute power corrupts kind of thing, and money, there's nothing more powerful than money.
Sure, but that's really the question, is like, do psychedelics actually have the power to overcome that when it happens? Like the idea that corporations are getting involved in all this shit, on one hand, is you're going to have lobbying for the legalization of this shit like we've never seen before, because there's going to be money, corporations, lobbyists, and fucking in Washington, like really pushing for this shit to go forward.
Yeah, because they want to make money on it.
At least in this country, how that gets done. So is that really, again, we can look at something like recycling and say, does it matter if somebody's making money off recycling if it's what it takes to get recycling done? You know what I mean? Like where does the line get drawn? Because
I think the line,
psychedelics,
for me, like the line gets drawn when corporations are able to exclude people that don't have money from using the product, and I think that's a definite possibility, at least in America, probably in Canada as well, where corporations...
That all depends on like the legalization states.
Yeah.
Like if it's decriminalized, people will have access to it.
Yep.
Regardless.
I mean, my whole thing was...
whether it's in a therapeutic setting or in a home setting or because that, as far as I'm concerned, yes, it will be the people at the top who get first access to all this stuff. But at the same time, there's going to be a lot of people who, I believe there'll be a movement right behind that is all about access for all, and will, have these places set up where people can come and do this in a safe space without having to pay big bucks for it or even have health insurance.
I mean, what I hope to see in the rollout, and different than the way that marijuana was rolled out, is
no pun intended,
before these people start making millions. Hey, roll! Hey,
get it? As you
roll me a fat one, Jimmy. Yeah, rolling it. Rolling a blunt.
Yes.
We get it. We get
it?
that. That's
okay.
Yeah, marijuana
Just
rollout.
making sure.
That's it sounds like a sublime fucking music festival. The marijuana rollout. Fuck that shit. Anyways, but I think that before people start making millions and millions of dollars, you should probably let the people that are in fucking jail for it out of jail and kind of unruin their lives as best as possible, because there's people that have spent fucking decades in jail for shit that people are going to start making tons and tons of money off of. And you look at like Biden, he did the federal pardon for a lot of people that had marijuana charges and stuff like that, but that's also, there's a lot more people that have charges on the state level that that doesn't really affect. So it's a great thing that that is happening, but maybe not make that mistake, Sam.
I'm really curious to see how it rolls out in the respect of, as let's take ketamine for example. As ketamine becomes more and more easily accessible in a legal way, like you can go to a ketamine clinic, you can do treatments there, have infusions, whatever, but you got to pay a couple grand or $1,000 or something to get your ketamine infusion. I'm interested to see if, as that becomes more common, is that going to decrease the availability of the substance to people who currently, with it in its like not legal state, is it going to make it harder for people to access it because most of the material is like diverted to ketamine clinics where they can make the most amount of money, Well,
I think the fact that the biggest thing that ketamine has going for it is that it's off patent. So the drug itself is not expensive, which means that really what you're paying for is just the infusion, which means that a nonprofit can pop up at any time and offer it for a much cheaper price because you're really just paying for the experience of going to the place and getting the infusion. The drug itself is pennies.
I get
because
that.
It's off-brand now.
But I guess and
that's a big difference.
He's talking about the actual the raw material, I think, is what you're talking about, right, Carson?
I'm sort of talking about. Like for me, it's fairly easy to get ketamine through illicit means, right? Like I can go to my street dealer and, purchase a gram of ketamine for however much. But if
how many loonies is
it's
that?
About 7 loonies. No, in Canada right now, I think a gram of ketamine goes for around $60 to $80.
Loonies.
Yeah, 60 to 80 loonies.
You have 5 on it, like the loonies did.
So, but I'm like curious if, like, as more ketamine clinics open, if the supply on the illicit market will become like smaller, and because more of the ketamine is being taken up by legalized clinics, and there's less available on the street, and then you have to go to a clinic in order to and pay $1,000 to get your fucking dose instead of.
I don't think we've ever seen a problem with like drugs not being made fast enough. Like if there's a market for shit, it's gonna fucking be made. And again, it's like because the drug usually the barrier between getting healthcare as far as like medical stuff goes, like pharmaceutical, is the cost of the pharmaceuticals. That's really the barrier. And ketamine doesn't have that cost. So again, it's like, yes, there's going to be the fancy ketamine clinics that people are going to go in and pay $500 for an infusion over the course of 5 sessions, $500 a pop, which is completely not like something that the average person can do. But at the same time, will there be a parallel movement where you can have access to these at much lower prices because the drug itself is low? So again, like if I were to start my own ketamine clinic as a nonprofit, right, and just for the good of people, I could charge $30 for somebody to come in and get a fucking ketamine thing. So I mean, I guess we gotta look at it like acupuncture, right? Let's talk about like acupuncture and the availability of that, because that's something that there's no actual like cost besides the actual getting the acupuncture. The needles don't cost a lot of money. You know what I mean? So if we compare acupuncture to like a ketamine infusion,
you're like paying for somebody's experience, or like they're
correct. So
absolutely. Well, you look at ketamine,
and it decides on the person.
You look at ketamine, and it's a difficult chemical to synthesize. So it's one of those things where the majority of the illicit market is made legitimately and then diverted. It's not like there's a lot of clandestine fucking labs, chemists creating ketamine.
But there doesn't have to be.
Like so,
because like my nonprofit ketamine clinic can get the real stuff at cheap.
Well, let's start that. If there's anyone out there watching our video today,
I got
a business proposal for you.
Because I think, and I know I'm playing devil's advocate here, but I think, one thing I did notice and like at Wonderland and just meeting some people that are active in this space is that they, even though there's money involved, look, like if you want to be in the psychedelic game and that's going to be your job, it's going to have to pay your bills. You're going to have to get some money from it. That's just how it goes. So, but if you're coming from a heart space instead of this capitalist mindset, and is that possible? I know there's some companies now that are ketamine clinics who they have offshoots where like nonprofit offshoots that are working with people, training them in like maybe lower income communities or people of color or something like that, training them to be facilitators in these certain things to serve their own community.
I think,
you know what I mean?
But I think where it really is going to be interesting is that say you are a ketamine manufacturer, and you're like, okay, I can sell to these legal ketamine clinics, and I can sell it for a higher price because they're charging more for it and they're willing to pay more for it. And that, because of that, it's, I guess ketamine goes to veterinary clinics, some hospitals, and then ketamine clinics. That's probably the main three like legal like purchasers from the ketamine manufacturer. And then from there it's diverted illegally by people that work at a vet clinic, people that work at a ketamine clic, or
sure,
really cool
people that give a shit about other people and like want to help them
want to help them get in a K-hole.
Get in the K-hole,
Yeah, shout out to the diverters, man. The diverters are the shit.
But again,
We
we're
love
going
you guys.
back to the fact that it's off patent, which means that they literally can't charge a lot for it because anybody else can enter the game and undercut them at any time once it's off patent. That's the thing. That's why they're starting this S-ketamine thing. That's why that exists, because they can patent. They've patented a form of ketamine, but not the original thing.
I think
so. If somebody's charging $50 a vial, somebody else can come in because the person making it for $50 a vial doesn't have the rights to it, and like doesn't have exclusive rights to it, and somebody else come in and do it for 40, and then somebody else can do it for 30, and somebody else can do it for 20. And it's, it's just a race to the bottom when drugs become this. That's how you can, it's like, it's the same thing as generic drugs. You know what I mean? Like once generics pop up, you could pay the full price for the original, but once the generics there, after a certain amount of time, now they can make generics. All of a sudden you get the same prescription that was $200 for $7. You know what I mean?
Yeah, my Viagra intake ever since that became generic has just been skyrocketing. It doesn't work though. I keep on trying to put it in my penis, and it's not working.
Ketamine is in kind of a space of its own because of its the fact that it's not Schedule 1, the fact that it's been around forever, the fact that it is off patent. Let's talk about something like mushrooms.
Yeah, mushrooms
and accessibility there.
Mushrooms are hard to put in your dick, even harder than Viagra pills, and they don't seem to work either as far as maintaining an erection. It just makes more pain.
Yeah.
Which ends up giving me an erection, which makes me really just wonder what's going on with me personally. I need to go to the ketamine clinic and get my shit back on.
So mushrooms. All right, let's talk about mushrooms, right? So I don't know. I know that I think it's Compass is attempting to patent psilocybin, and there is another company that's doing everything open source. So the argument right now is if somebody's going to have the ability to patent psilocybin, and that's going to be the problem, because psilocybin has never been a drug made in a lab yet.
It's also
as far as a pharmaceutical goes. So we're in a position right now where that can happen. And if psilocybin does get patented, that's when access gets difficult. Unless you just buy a kit and grow it.
Yeah,
in your
that's
house.
where that gets tricky, because like psilocybin grows in mushrooms like
illegal
in the forest or like in the fucking cow pasture, So like, how do you like enforce a patent on something that grows wild? That's pretty fucking tricky.
Yeah, but it's one of those things and that's really a huge, huge part of this whole rollout is that, because psilocybin is obviously going to be one of the things that's widely used in therapy and beyond. Like it's being, there's so many clinical trials going on. So if it,
well, I mean, psilocybin is the first one that's going to be used in the psychedelic therapy in Colorado. Right. That's for the first, I think, until
that was the first one used here in Canada.
They're going to be using that
too.
Nobody's gotten the patent on it yet, but it's like, are there analogs of psilocybin, that can be used or even, in its place if somebody gets a patent on it?
Even just synthetic psilocybin, right?
But that's what they're making,
right? I think it's 4-ACO-DMT,
like pure psilocybin,
right? Like that's.
And I'm pretty sure that's what they're trying to patent. Is like is the
synthetic version,
made pure psilocybin. They're not extracting it from mushrooms;
No.
They're making it from scratch. Yeah. So that's the thing.
Can you imagine how nice Miami would be if someone got the patent for cocaine down there? We'd be we'd be living in the high life down here.
Literally, yeah.
So
the high. Look at we're getting fucking punny tonight, man.
So, with mushrooms, it's a weird thing. So I would say personally, like psilocybin should not be patentable. Like that should be off the table, because as soon as that happens, that's where all the doors to entry pop up with price, because they'll be able to charge whatever they want at that point. That's when it becomes a monopoly.
Yeah.
That's when it becomes one corporation controlling all the psilocybin. And then they can work, through this weird industrial insurance industry that we have that drives the cost of everything up.
I think I'm less concerned with psilocybin personally, like that particular substance, just because it's so easy to grow. It grows fucking naturally. They might be able to patent the synthetic version of it, but the natural version of it is going to be readily available to everyone, just like it is now. That's right,
but it's legality. That's the door to it right now is legality. It's if they get the patent and mushrooms get decriminalized, that's a whole other story. If they get a patent and mushrooms are looked at still as a drug, and psilocybin is something that should only be used in a therapeutic setting by a doctor, that's when the door closes to a big percentage of the population.
Isn't that going to change the scheduling though? Because as soon as they patent it for doctors' use, it automatically has
it
from
moves
Schedule
out
1
from
because
Schedule
that's
1.
No medicinal fucking use for it. It's going to have to be rescheduled.
Schedule 1 is no medicinal use. Schedule 2 is medicinal use, but there's negative things about it. And then as you move down the schedules, the adverse effects are
once
supposed
they
to be
patent
less.
Psilocybin, synthetic psilocybin, they're going to have to reschedule mushrooms. They will have to.
But if they reschedule it,
look at marijuana though. Federally, marijuana is still Schedule 1, I believe.
It is, but even with that, if it is scheduled at all, it's illegal with the public. You can't
absolutely
walk down the street with a bag of mushrooms and talk to a cop.
Eating them all jolly like an elf.
It's still illegal. If they're scheduled at all, it's illegal. That's the thing. Is it going to be decriminalized?
It's so different in Canada than it is in the States, man. We had 420 festival here in Vancouver, which is I don't know, a couple 100,000 people getting stoned on April 20th. But me and a buddy had a booth, and we had, it must have been easily 10 pounds of mushrooms in our booth that we were selling all fucking day long, with the cops fucking walking around and didn't give a fucking shit. It's
America's
totally.
fucked
I
up.
think where they were starting, people are starting to see shit like that here, even at the festivals that were happening in Miami, the weed ones, because when that was going on, it still was in a gray area, and the cops were kind of allowing it to happen.
Yeah, same here.
Blah, blah, blah. It'll just be interesting to see what happens with mushrooms, and where that goes. But again, it's I think the biggest hurdle is going to be keeping it from being patented
off of Fox News.
What's interesting is and I just found this out. It's apparently this happened last year, but one of my heroes, Hamilton Morris, is actually working for the company that is attempting to patent it,
Sure.
and had spoken out against them before. So it's kind of like I'm interested to see where he lands in that space as far as working with a company that is that's run by Peter Thiel and all these huge venture capitalists in Silicon Valley, and who are looking to, those are the guys who are really looking to make the money out of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like the fact that he's on the ground floor with them, the question is, is he going to bring this idea with him of this should not be patentable, or is, he going to get on the payroll? So, and I hope he doesn't. I love me some Hamilton Morris, shout out Hamilton. But it was
Hammy,
kind of,
talk
yeah.
to us. Come on our show. Defend yourself, or help us know
Yeah.
more. Teach
I'm
us.
very
We need to
interested
learn from you,
know,
Hammy.
where his involvement is with that, because Compass was, is always been like that outlier of like, oh, this is the company that's really trying to profit off of this. And then I can't
absolutely.
remember the other company's name offhand, but they're all open source and like free to all clinical trials and all this shit. So and they're not trying to patent it as far as I know. So
We should learn what the nice company's name is, so we can talk about them and use
let's
their
look up
name.
Psychedelic Nice
they're
Company.
I mean, that's going to come up with a lot of different results.
Well, I know there's two major players, Compass being one of them, and I'm not sure who the other one is, but
Do you like how I call Hamilton Morris Hammy? Like he's like one of my good friends, and I have a nickname for him already.
Yes, I love Hamilton. I feel like he's my good friend. I'm on his Patreon. I listen to everything he puts out. I think he is like one of the guys who brought this to where we're at now. If it wasn't for Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia, like that was some OG shit when it came out. Like there was nothing like that.
That's a really good show.
Destigmatizing stuff, which is, awesome.
Yeah, completely. And like bringing it to
absolutely.
the table and showing like the facts and leaving all the bullshit out. And he's done so much for the movement already, in my opinion, that I think he is in a place where a lot of people feel he can do no wrong, myself included. And I just really, really, really hope that that's the case and he stays on that trajectory as far as working with Compass.
I think that really,
That's what I like about us, is that we're like, we don't have to be about facts, and we can be like, and everyone knows
we're
that we
on
can only
nobody's
do
fucking
wrong.
payroll.
We're like, yeah, dude, we're fucking renegades, dude. Brett, we fucking snuck into
I
that
think-
festival, dude. There was a band list. There was a media band list at Wonderland. Brett and I found out about this. There was they banned certain people from going into that thing, and fucking Brett and I could walk right in there with a little microphone and talk to just about
That's
everybody
fucking
with no
dope.
passes. We just looked, I guess we looked pretty cool or
yeah, I
something.
don't know. Like looking back on that after I read that article and realized that there were people who they weren't, like there were a lot of, not a lot, but they had a list of journalists and
media outlets.
other people who, yeah, I guess maybe.
Sasha got forcibly removed, man. Sasha got yanked.
Interesting.
Yoked out.
So yeah, there's a few people that got
They
yoked,
loved us.
and we literally just walked in and interviewed people without any pass or anything. So I'm shocked now that we kind of were able to pull that off with them.
Because we got the fucking balls of steel, baby. The fucking big cojones,
Really,
you know?
these guys look crazy enough to be a part of the shit. But anyway, so getting back to what we were talking about, like, let's look at, so we have ketamine. We have, like, we're not even going to talk about like DMT and shit. I think DMT probably has the biggest chance to spread. The good thing about DMT and ayahuasca is that it's already there's already stipulations for the current ayahuasca churches that are here. And I just want to quote a little thing that Neil Brennan said the other day, which was the funniest shit ever. Ayahuasca. I just want to toss it in real quick because he had a very amazing ayahuasca experience. He's somebody who has really, really struggled with depression and all sorts of shit his whole life, and went through a lot of different therapies, went through ketamine therapy, went through, had a crazy DMT experience that ended up lasting like months. He kept having like the recurring experience over and over, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
He talked about this on a podcast recently, so we can link to that. But the one thing he said was like, I went to the ayahuasca church and I did this ceremony. I don't know if he went to the church or where he went, but he did an ayahuasca ceremony. And his takeaway was like, this is what church thinks it is.
Exactly.
So it's like beautiful that there already are these kind of spiritual communities set up that have access to this, and their growth is kind of as big as they want to get. So the more interest, and maybe you know more about this, Ashley, as far as like ayahuasca church goes, like, are they seeing what's happening? Are they seeing an increase, and are they prepared to grow with this movement?
Well, so that the church that I went to, the UDV, they are super into growth. The cool thing about them that I found out just from the whole going there and whatnot, I felt like it was kind of this like going into it. I felt it was like this like members only kind of. I would be like, who the fuck's this weird ass dude coming in here to take this shit? But it was like the entire opposite. The whole purpose of the church is to spread this to as many people as possible. So they love having members bring guests, and like I'm going back. It was an amazing experience, and they are
like
so they have ceremonies that go from like 20 to 30 people to hundreds of people. Like there are different, and there are nucleos based all around the country.
Right.
So all around the world, I think in total the church has 22,000 members around the globe.
That's
right
where
now.
I'm interested, because that's right there. That's a loophole for ayahuasca. Like if anybody wants to take ayahuasca, they go to this place and they can take ayahuasca.
And so another thing that I'll say about that is the fact that it is legal and it's heavily regulated. Like they have the ceremonies based on certain times. Like the batches are all going through DEA regulations. Like it's extremely fucking safe, and it's done in a very, very smart and kind way, which is something that I would hope to see on the rollout for everything else. I'm worried with human error and everything that when people start having, psychedelic therapies, we're going to hear about sexual abuse, people letting their ego take over. I think that, that was one of the things you and I were talking about, Brett, was, people, the cults that formed out of psychedelics and stuff like that. Like
I had an experience literally in a mushroom trip that in pictures showed me how a cult is formed. And it was like these puppets. It was crazy. It was one of the craziest mushroom experience I've ever had. It was it's got to be like 10 years ago now. It was when I grew them and I first started getting back into everything from after my youth. And it basically showed me like, here's how a cult's formed. Somebody has a mystical experience, whether it be via psychedelics or via spiritual practice or whatever, but it doesn't stick, but their ego believes it did. And that's where a cult starts, because that's where the ego becomes, I'm God and everybody should listen to me and follow me and all this shit.
That's where dogma comes in, They create they create a dogma around a single experience, and somebody like,
and also this idea that they are above everybody else. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I thought you were talking about the hot dog restaurant dogma. It's really good.
Is that just even still around anymore?
And no, it's not.
It was.
Anyways, hot dog heaven. That's what fucking lasts.
Some Fort Lauderdale shit right there.
And if you join my cult, I promise you that everyone goes to hot dog heaven.
I know.
Veggie hot dogs all the way.
You gotta trust me. Mustache hot dogs. Mustache
but what
hot
you were
dogs.
saying,
Baby, those things go together.
How like the ego comes in, unethical practitioners, like that was like one of the cons of this whole, psychedelic revolution that I can see being a real possibility, is that people with not enough psychedelic experience, but maybe like therapist credentials, or like have managed to go through whatever legal loopholes are required in order to be able to offer treatments to people, they start offering psychedelic therapy to people, but are like woefully unqualified for it. Because in my opinion, in order to be a proper psychedelic therapist, you better have done fucking like lots of psychedelics. If you haven't eaten mushrooms like 50 fucking times and are offering mushroom therapy, mushroom therapy sessions, like there's a real possibility that those are going to go sour fast, and
I think that already happens in psychiatry right now. I mean, you're looking at doctors who've never taken most of the drugs that they're prescribing, and then basically just creating a cocktail for somebody to take and figuring it out through just this idea of what it's supposed to do,
or even
as opposed to understanding what it does.
or even therapists that
So
just haven't
That's a great
done
point.
the work, worked on their own
that's-
fucking shit, like emotional shit, let alone
I think
drugs that they're prescribing. But I mean,
I agree with that. And also, we're now getting into this idea of, and this is an excellent point with this rollout, I think, that we need to talk about, is training. So MAPS, for instance, has created this whole training thing for MDMA sessions, and they might have done other ones, I don't know, but they're in these sessions, there's actually 2 facilitators in every session. So there's 2 people who meet beforehand, go through some stuff, talk, and then they have the session with the patient. And I think that is brilliant, personally. This idea of having 2 people,
accountability, man. You definitely need
and
accountability.
both trained under the same protocol. You know what I mean? Where
also,
they can kind of see when things are going sideways and be like,
that's going to,
you know what I mean?
Definitely increase cost though. A single therapist is $150 to $250 an hour. You got 2 of them together, plus this psychedelic, any new therapy modality is you can make extra money off of it. You throw psychedelics in the mix, and next thing you know, you're at $1,000 an hour. A 6-hour mushroom session, you're looking at $5,000 or some fucking shit when you've got 2 fucking therapists.
Look, there's going to be that, but there's also going to be the people who are coming from the space like us who might say, oh yeah, I'll take a fucking therapy thing that allows me to become a facilitator of these things. It's not going to be something that you have to be a doctor.
Well, that's another thing though,
because we're talking about once, if you're not supplying the drugs, you're just sitting there.
That's true, but
it's
again,
not,
that brings up another good point. Should licensed psychotherapists be the only people who are legally qualified to offer psychedelic therapy, or should there be? I know that that's not the case. You can get a psychedelics therapy qualification, but some of these qualification programs, whatever you want to call them, certification programs, some of them are really short. It's like yoga, it's you become you take a 200-hour fucking yoga teacher training, and next thing you know, you're teaching people how to do yoga, but you don't how good at yoga can you be if you've only taken 200-hour training program and maybe done a couple of yoga sessions?
I feel like the ideal scenario would be a mixture of all that. You do have someone with a psychotherapy background, you have someone who's taken a shitload of psychedelics and has done research on that, and you have different perspectives within the same entity, kind of leading to a more positive experience and more bases being covered. You look at a lot of I always thought, I have a psychology degree, and I always thought that it was cool when I would see people in practice where there would be someone who was completely focused on treating depression, and they weren't a psychiatrist. They just researched a lot of different methods in that realm, and then they had a psychiatrist that worked at the same clinic. So if they did need to prescribe drugs, they could do that.
You could have one psychiatrist and then a bunch of people with
exactly. You have someone who is can administer the drugs. You have someone who knows about the drugs, and then you have someone who knows about the mind, and you ideally you'd have all of that within the same practice.
Would be perfect for the ketamine therapy as well.
Yeah, some integrated
if you have
system.
One person who deals with the actual drugs himself, and then you have trained people who deal with the actual therapy sessions, who aren't $150 an hour people. So
Man, and you know what? To me, honestly, like, I think, and this is another debate, and it's another rift in the
would you say
psychedelic
it's
community.
a mass debate?
But it's a mass debate amongst
Do you
these.
like masturbating?
It's a mass debate amongst a bunch of dickheads.
Yeah.
I'm
You
good
like
at that.
masturbating?
You get it?
I like masturbating. Hey,
Yeah.
I'm a
They're being real
masturbator.
clits about it. Yeah, they're being
Alright.
real
I cut you off.
assholes.
Alright.
You can
Go
use.
ahead.
No, it's okay. You can masturbate with their
Yeah, I
assholes
know.
too. Little known fact. Well, I mean, I guess not in this crew. Not a little known fact there.
What were you saying?
Fuck, what was I
You're
saying?
talking-
Oh, about keeping spirituality involved in it. So maybe you have someone who is more of a spiritual person. So it's not just this fucking medical, like, science, pen and paper fucking bullshit. I think that there's a lot to be said about the unknown and the things that we do, and you know, the DMT
Even having a
and the
fucking
mushrooms.
shaman on
there's
fucking
this-
staff, you know, like,
Exactly.
Well, we have to
That's
also
what I'm saying, man.
realize that
Because
that's
like,
not going to be for everyone.
of course,
You know what I mean? And there's
Of
got to be
course.
this divide of people who are going to look at it as a therapeutic thing, and there's going to be people who are looking at it as a like spiritual growth thing. And
well, it's like the peyote versus mescaline, the getting 5-MeO-DMT from a toad versus synthesized. You know, there's people that say that because you're doing it from nature and from the spiritual, that there's an extra layer of this healing that you can't get from that. Is that real? I don't know. We're gonna have to do it live on a live stream. If you pay us money, we'll do the drugs in front of you,
hey,
Coke,
you're
Pepsi
already
test,
asking
and
for
we'll
money. Talk about capitalism.
Dude,
my pocket.
I'm a hypocrite, man. I'm here to admit it. Yeah, I'm just asking for money to buy drugs,
Yeah,
man.
so
Or do
so here's
drugs.
the thing where it's like, all right, so we got mushroom.
150 an hour.
MDMA is going to be
$1.50.
the other one, you know, obviously, and that's the one that maps.
I'll do that for free.
So I think it's going to be interesting to see how this rolls out. And I think that's where people are very skeptical right now. But personally, I'm optimistic because I think that the compounds themselves will create the change that will change the system eventually. Like, regardless of how they're introduced to society.
I want to believe
if
that,
people
dude,
heal
but
their, if people,
it's
That's very
Super
optimistic, Brett.
idealistic.
I like
people
that.
heal their past traumas, we're talking about a different, imagine a society where at the age of 21, you do a psychedelic therapy session that are a series of psychedelic therapy sessions that clears you of your childhood, of all the traumas of your childhood, and you enter the world as an adult without that baggage. Because that's the possibility that I see. You know what I mean?
That's the possibility that fucking Spirit Airlines is looking for too, man. Traveling without baggage, those motherfuckers.
So maybe they could be a sponsor for us. Spirit,
Exactly.
shout out, give us a holler. We need sponsors. So, but again, it's like, what does that society look like? Because that's the eventual society that we're talking about. So regardless of if these big corporations get a hold of it and all this stuff, if this becomes adopted as a thing where people do it early on in life in a responsible way, and they do work through these past traumas, you know, we don't end up with people like fucking Elon Musk and people who want to be billionaires and people who just are taking like their inner child out on the world. And, you know, that leads to a more open heart. It leads to more empathy for people. It leads to more connectedness, as we already talked about. And that may be 50 years in the future.
yeah.
But that's where I see the power of psychedelics taking it.
That leads to a world of more givers than takers, you know?
Right.
And
it becomes...
How does the emo community feel about this? Because I feel
You
like
would be
if
the
we don't
one to
have a
answer
childhood
that. You're in
trauma,
the fucking emo band. Right. What was
I
your
was,
band's
dude.
name? Let's shout them out. Get some plays on fucking
Uh,
Spotify.
I have a couple, man. Madeline, Chasing Manhattan.
Chasing Manhattan. That's a very
Chasing
emo
Manhattan.
name.
did you have the
It was, dude, and I had the
Where'd
emo
you ever
haircut.
get
one
there?
eye, you can only see one eye and shit?
I covered both of my eyes because I was really emo,
You didn't want to
That's
see
like
anything.
but I let my
that's
third
like
eye
emo
out,
to
question.
baby.
the max.
Is this the end of emo? You know what I mean? Emo
I
requires.
hope not, dude.
trauma.
Emo night is South Florida's biggest
It will be-
export
it
right
will-
now, dude.
It will
Emo
be
night.
like fucking Japan's version of everything American, where it's just like they adopt like the look and the thing, but it's not actually like the thing itself. That's what emo will be in the future.
Well, speaking of, this is completely fucking out of left field, but I have to say this. I saw a video of a bunch of Japanese people at the World Cup, and they cleaned up the stadium after they left, and it wasn't even their match. Speaking of givers, not
Yeah.
takers, fucking
Fuck
shout out
yeah.
Shout out
Japan,
Japan.
dude. That's
So
But it's
sick.
also, you look at a lot of European countries and places like maybe like Denmark or the Netherlands or whatever, where it's like having a lot of money and flaunting it is whack as fuck there.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
not looked at like it's a thing that you do. Like it's fucking cheesy as fuck. It's fucking like it's just corny, and it's not something that they're really like. So it's like that's the part that would kind of disappear, where it's like, all right, if people are still making money there, don't get me wrong, but they're not like, it's not this
amassing mass
like-
wealth, on the backs
Right.
of everybody else, being like, I'm gonna prop myself up.
And what is that?
Well, I think-
That's the
I
back
think
of
you
their
hope-
fucking childhood traumas is really what it
Totally.
is.
But I think that you're hoping, which this is obviously what all of us are hoping, but you're hoping that the people that are profiteering off of these substances
Yeah,
are
I
using
think
them
so.
themselves.
Well, I'm hoping
There's also the
I'm hoping
potential.
that eventually they all die and the people that replaced them worked with their traumas. That's all that needs to happen.
That'd be
I
sick.
mean, why do you, that
We should invent something
eventually,
that's really,
in
really,
50 years they'll
that's
all
really,
be
really
dead.
expensive. No, we get something that's really expensive that billionaires want to buy, but it kills them fast, and then that's it. Then we get our money,
That's
to the
right.
society we want.
Fucking A.
Boom,
Sick.
Oh, dude.
problem
But yeah,
solved.
so
Elon, I'm coming for you, motherfucker.
it's you can look at any of these guys, people who are jockeying for power. Like, what does government look like in a place where people are working through their childhood trauma at an early age? These are the people who will be replacing the people in government. You know what I mean? So this is where the evolution of overall human consciousness comes into play. There's a tipping point that we can get to where it starts that roll down the fucking hill and things change. The elevation of human consciousness as a whole raises to a point where empathy and love and connectedness are the normal things.
Yeah.
And that's through, I believe that's the potential of a society that's using psychedelics in a responsible manner.
And the fucking House of Representatives is just a big orgy, and everyone's like making out and stuff. Instead of arguing, they're finger fucking
eating
each other and
MDMA
shit. It'd be
and-
amazing.
yeah.
I do not want to pick. I do not want to picture
dude.
Bernie Sanders finger fucking anyway.
I got a Bernie Sanders pin on.
Yeah,
Look,
he's a
I still
sweetheart.
win him.
I don't want that.
Like, neither
I would
of
fuck
you
that
guys
guy,
are
dude.
parents,
I'd
though,
break
right?
his hip.
Like, you guys don't have kids, correct? I know Brett does.
Right.
No, I keep on
Are
coming
you-
inside of Bernie Sanders, and nothing ever propagates.
I got 2 kids, 2 daughters. They're 12 and 10 right now, and we talk about psychedelic use. I'm open about it with them. They know that I eat mushrooms. They know about going to therapy. They know about, I've been diagnosed with complex PTSD. They know about all of that shit, and they know about, my personal desire to deal with my childhood trauma and rid myself of that baggage. So I know that at least in my household, the future generation is already well aware of trauma, the work required to rid yourself of that trauma, that psychedelics are an adjunct or modality to work through trauma. So I think as psychedelics become more widely accepted, more destigmatized, more socially relevant, I think that my kids will probably be, hey, yeah, I'm going to eat some fucking mushrooms, or
I agree. And I have a buddy who, like, one of my childhood friends that I grew up with, he's the same way with his kids. Like, I'm pretty sure he gave his kid the book, How to Change Your Mind. Like, after he read it,
Yeah.
he sat his kid down and said, I just want to share this with you. Like, this is something that I found interesting and I think you might want to check out. Like, if you ever want to talk about stuff like this, I'm here to talk about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and obviously it's
I mean,
like weird when your
education is
dad is doing
healthy.
that or whatever, but I think that is what you're doing in your household. And from that, him telling me that, it seems to be that's what's
It
happening.
might
And
take.
this is what we need to look at, is the generations of the future.
It's going. to take
That's where
time.
the change is going to happen.
It will take
Yeah.
a few generations probably, but in time, I think it's highly likely that the future generations won't have the stigmatization of psychedelics.
They'll be more open to therapy
They'll
and
be
mental health treatment.
open to therapy and mental health treatments. They'll psychedelics therapy will be accessible to them and hopefully, affordable, accessible, like desirable even. And they can, as much
Yeah.
I've fucked up my kids, every parent is their child's like most traumatizing fucking,
You can't get away from
it's
that.
inevitable,
I mean,
like I
Yeah,
have
man.
traumatized my kids in some ways, and I'm sure that will show up in time. But as they, grow up, I hope that they will work through the trauma I've, caused them. And maybe psychedelics will be a part of that, like, shedding of that trauma. And
that's really what I like, where my mind goes to. So let's end on a high note. What is that?
Wait. I gotta say
What?
one thing. So that is beautiful what you said, Carson, and it reminded me of when I was getting ready to go take ayahuasca. I of course told my mom, I have great parents. My mom's fucking awesome, very open and honest relationship, always have had that. And she was really worried about it. And I was worried. I thought that she was worried that I was going to be like poisoned or like I was going to die from it. That was my thought. So when I took it and I talked to her afterwards, yeah, it was a great experience. She was like, I wasn't worried about that. I was worried that it was going to make you remember stuff and that you would come out of it hating me. And I was like, no, if anything, it made me like love and appreciate everything that I was
Nice.
given from my
Yeah.
parents and like realize that, like you said, everyone's just fucking winging it, man. And as a kid, you think that everyone knows what the fuck they're doing, but you don't. And it's something that people admitting and allowing their
that
children
makes
to
me
heal
want
is
to give
fucking
my
Yeah,
kids
man.
ayahuasca. I'm going to feed it to
You
them
should, man.
tomorrow. Then they'll really appreciate
it's like-
me.
Again, it's like, so to
Yeah,
end
they
this
will
thing
do.
on a high note, what do you guys, and we'll each have a turn, but we'll start with you, Ashley. What best case scenario? What does this a world where people are able to work through their traumas via psychedelics at an early age? What does that world look like? Because to me, that's really the epitome of the possibility of incorporating psychedelics into a society in a responsible way. So what does it look like?
To me, I think that a world, rid of their trauma is a world where art and creating beauty is put on the forefront, and where money and social status and everything like that falls to the
Yeah.
wayside. And obviously, everyone's going to need the tools to survive, but I feel like as we grow, people are going to be more willing to help each other out and care and be compassionate towards each other, to where we are focused less on spending 40 50 hours a week at work and focus on making other people's lives more beautiful through the tools we have already, through music, food, innovation, and using the fucking huge benefits that we have nowadays, like the internet, to spread that on a huge
Yeah,
scale.
Yeah, man.
Carson?
I think like ideally I would like to believe that future where psychedelics are accepted and widely used by people would result in a world where cooperation is at the forefront instead of competition, where we're not like fighting each other and stepping on top of each other to get ahead, but we're like building each other up and helping each other so that collectively as a whole we like rise to greater heights than we as a whole, instead of like individually trying to like beat the pack, you know?
Yeah, man. And I think that's like
That's
fucking
awesome.
it. It's like we need to remember that this is all a process, that it's not like we can never get there. Like this is a working, humanity is a working fucking like an experiment. Like all of this is just an experiment that's happening. It's like a process going on. Like humans evolving? If they are, then this could be that next step towards a society that is inclusive, that is, you know, I heard something today in a documentary. There was a German guy and he was talking about money, and he used the word how much the person earned instead of how much the person makes. And I was like, God,
Oh, that's
that's
awesome.
such a huge difference in a word. You know what I mean? Like, because we don't look at things that way here. You know what I mean? It's more about stacking money than like earning your way to fucking something and like
Right.
whatever. Anyways, that being said, I do think that there is the potential for the humanity 3.0. And as soon as we get there, as soon as we reach that pinnacle and everybody loves each other, asteroid, and then we start over again.
Yeah, that's probably what happened the last time,
And
man.
that's it. And that's this dimension of reality. We figured it out. Start from scratch, motherfuckers. And that's it. And with that,
Yeah.
we're out of here. Thank you if you made it this far.
All right,
Thank you
guys.
for listening.
You got to subscribe to my
Yes.
OnlyFans. This week, I'm gonna be laying billionaires on the ground, wearing high heels and stepping
Dude,
on their
I
balls.
will
So check out
subscribe to
Ashley's
that.
OnlyFans. Check out our YouTube channel. We got some great shit going up. We have some coverage of the Wonderland thing. We got some news reports that we're bringing you. We got some funny shit. We got some serious shit. We got some all over the place shit. Psychedelic State 2022. We out. Peace.